All right, so just a few minutes ago, I received this message from Aku-chan, or Aku-chan, or however you say that. Forgive me, I don't know. Asking me to take a look at this video here from Cracked. And as soon as I took a look, immediately I knew that it was something that was probably going to be pretty well skewed. And then upon watching it, sure enough, it really was. Um, on the one hand, I think it's really just being clickbaity, right? It's trying to court controversy in order to get people to click on it and engage with the cracked guys here. But on the other hand, there's something a little bit insidious here. The host, this guy named Sargent, seems to be putting himself in position of representing this white male demographic as though, hey, look at me, I'm one of you guys, and I recognize that everything that I feel is totally wrong, and so all of you guys should feel like me too. Um, I really think he's just speaking out of ignorance, and so as a game developer with about 21 years of experience, I thought I would respond to it and kind of point out where I think the flaws are and provide a counterpoint. So I'm not going to respond to everything, but just some of the more salient points. And this is quick, and here we go.
We're holding them back because you can't admit that the level of violence in video games is smearing banana paste on your chest and calling yourself the king of France insane. Look, game bros and game ladies, I don't think violence in video games is a bad thing. I just think it's weird that it's the only thing.
Yeah. So Mr. Sargent's first point here is supposedly about violence, but the thing that stands out to me is that he seems to be playing this kind of strange game where he's like, hey guys, look at me, I'm a gamer guy and I love the violence, but hey, there's too much of it, and so we should, what? Feel bad about it. There's kind of this strange thing that I picked up on right away, that he feels like he's trying to be one of the gaming community, but at the same time being critical of it, not in a way that's advocating necessarily for change, but rather that he's advocating for guilt. And that's a little bit troubling to me. I don't really see what his point is otherwise. In fact, the whole thing makes a lot more sense if you see the video as, hey, I want my fellow gamers to feel guilty about their hobby. Anyway, as to the points that Mr. Sargent is trying to make, there are two things that I think we need to keep in mind. First of all, there have been a lot of studies done on violence in video gaming, and they have all come back. The majority, the preponderance, is that violence in video games doesn't do any harm. It's recognized as fantasy, and nobody's harmed by it, and it doesn't increase violence in the real world. If anything, we've seen the instances of violence go down as video game sales have surged. And then the second point we should keep in mind here is that Mr. Sargent here seems to be either woefully or deliberately ignorant of the vast amount of choices in video games that are out there. If you don't like violent video games, there are lots and lots that aren't violent at all. He seems to be looking deliberately through this very narrow window into the gaming universe and focusing in on only these violent games when he talks about them, and forgetting everything else that's out there. And it kind of blows my mind. I don't know how he can consider himself a gamer and be so woefully, awfully unaware of how expansive the industry has become. Anyway, more on that here in a second.
One Twitter user pointed out that at the 2016 E3 Gaming Expo, 89% of the games shown were about solving problems with violent retribution.
Yikes, really? You're going to refer to Jonathan McIntosh as just one Twitter user, as though it's a totally innocent guy representing the gamers at large or something? Clearly he's not. Anybody who follows this knows that Jonathan McIntosh is a partner with Anita Sarkeesian, and that, as Dr. Christina Hoff Sommers says, their objective when they look into the gaming world is that they're trying to inflict their feminist ideals in and destroy the male gaming space that they perceive exists there. That's what they're about. So I don't know that he's, Mr. McIntosh is really an unbiased observer of what's going on at E3. Not exactly your most reliable source. That being said, I want to unpack this tweet of McIntosh's just a little bit and provide some context. Now, I've been on the E3 floor myself maybe a dozen times, usually representing a game or a big product that we had coming out. And that's the thing you need to recognize about E3. E3 is a press event aimed at launching big budget titles. It is not representative of the industry as a whole. It's representative of the big titles that are coming out, And everything that's on the floor is paying lots of money to be there. That's why you get kind of this skew towards the great big games. And then one of the things Macintosh says there is that it was on stage, which makes me think that he was sitting in some press event, say hosted by Microsoft, where maybe they showed like, 11 titles or something, and like 9 of those titles he determined to be violent. That's my guess about what really happened there. In no way is it representative of the entire industry. And to take this tweet as somehow being representative of the entire industry seems to me to be, well, kind of dishonest.
I want to point out that games can do a lot of stuff that isn't murder. There's The Sims, there's Minecraft. That's all I can think of off the top of my head. But we gamers still choose to spend our gaming dollar almost exclusively on recreations of the most f***ed up shit we see in the news.
Wow. Yeah. So out of the entire video, this piece right here was probably the thing that stood out to me as kind of the most salient, as the audacity was just blew me away here. So he says that he's a gamer, but he can only think of 2 non-violent games off the top of his head. I am amazed by that. I am quite confident I could think of hundreds, probably thousands. In fact, I can think of whole game genres off the top of my head. For example, racing, or match 3, or puzzle, or word games. There are hidden object games. There are just so many games out there that if you can only think of 2 off the top of your head that are nonviolent, I think that says more about you than it says about the industry. Which is the second part that bothers me about what he just said here, is that then he takes his inability to think of other games as somehow evidence that gamers are focused in on just the worst stuff, that we're all about, the awful violence that we can find out there. Again, at this point, I'm having a hard time understanding what's your overarching point here. It doesn't sound like you're necessarily advocating for change, maybe, but mostly it just feels like you're advocating for guilt. Let's tell the people in our audience that play video games that they should feel guilty about it, because reasons, I guess, court controversy, get more clicks. I'm really not sure what you're all about here, Mr. Sargent. Very, very strange.
Let me be clear here and say that my gamer cred is un-f***ing impeachable.
Yeah, your gamer cred is unimpeachable when you can only think of 2 games off the top of your head. Wow. What are you, like 25, maybe 29? I might have been making games since you were in diapers. Consider yourself impeached, buddy.
We don't actually care about story. I've read hundreds, probably, of articles about why video game stories are so bad. Why, the articles ask. Why are they so bad? I'll tell you. It's because we gamers, you and me, don't give a f***. It's not why we play, and it never has been, and it never will be. The stories don't matter to us.
As Donald Trump would say, wrong. I know a lot of people who play their games primarily because of the story. They want that interactivity. They want to experience the story at a deeper level. They want to spend, 40, 50, 60, 100 hours in another game universe. This whole notion that we don't care about story is ridiculous. Maybe you, Mr. Sargent, don't care about story. But when you say we, meaning us gamers, don't care about story, you're just reflecting your deep level of ignorance on the subject. Heck, my oldest son has an N7 tattoo on his shoulder. You tell me that he doesn't care about story.
We don't actually care if games are art or not. Remember when Roger Ebert said that video games could never be art? We got all mad for that stupid old man because he doesn't even play video games. And then remember how we spent the next decade doing nothing to prove him wrong?
Okay, the part that I agree with here is that most video gamers probably don't care if an academic qualifies their hobby as an art form or not. It's a semantic issue, right? What's art? What is not? What I do think you can say about video games, though, is that for many people, it's very engaging. It's very emotional. It has all the qualities of what good art should include. In the past, people didn't regard, comic books or film as art. Now they do. I think video games are in that same classification. Over time, it'll become so obvious as the generations get older that, of course, video games are an art form. They're a participatory art form, and that makes them unique and special.
Video games are not relaxing. When you talk to people about video games and bring up the stuff I've brought up, the violence, the lack of attention to story, the argument often becomes that they are a stress reliever. They're relaxing. You feel pent-up rage, and then you play video games, and you feel relaxed. The truth is, that's not how anger, stress relief, or relaxation work.
Yeah, of all the points in this video, this one kind of seems like the most kind of lame. Who really cares if you think that video games are relaxing or not? I'm not sure what your point is here, other than you try and make this big deal about, oh, video games can't be relaxing because they're also violent and intense. Seriously, your ignorance is just overflowing and spilling out all over the place. Lots of games are relaxing. Not every game out there is violent, so it just depends on what sort of games you want to play and what you personally find relaxing. But again, I feel like this last point was just tacked on there so that you could have a nice round number like 5, because other than your push for guilt here, Mr. Sargent, push to make video gamers feel bad about their hobby in some way, I don't see the point of this whole video. I don't know, maybe you're just trying to get a lot of clicks. Worked for me. I watched it. I responded. And that makes me realize I've probably said enough on this. So until later, guys, game on.